All right, welcome back into another Dragon Ball Supercard game video, and you saw the title. We're going to talk through some of the new support for the Supreme Kai of Time, and yeah, it's actually really good. Of course, like always, if you've been enjoying these deck profiles and explanations, and of course, if you have your own list, join the Discord in the description below, and as well as like the video and subscribe. If we can get to 100 likes, I'll do some gameplay. There are 3 things that you need to know when it comes to this new support. Well, it's the first one is the new support. There's like a few cards, pretty much 3 new cards that are pretty good, or I would say kind of broken, to be honest. And they're coming out of these new dash packs in this month, basically 2023 January. I made a video about that. You can check in the description below or the top corner here. The second one is how to awaken consistently, and as well as what kind of mulligan you want starting out. The third one is something I forget all the time, which is the auto triggers and as well as your warp management. Kai is kind of unique in which I think there's a couple other black leaders that do it, that instead of bursting and as well as using your deck to mill out and as well as use it as overwhelm fuel, which is really good, by the way. It's good that it uses the warp instead of using your deck to get stuff into your drop. And it's super important, so that way you can maximize and push the ceiling of this deck further. And honestly, I really like the deck. I have a fun pretty much every single time I play it, and as long as I can get my hands on the dash packs, I will probably be playing it for level up or whatever the Zenkai tournament is that's coming up, at least just for fun. Let's take a quick look at the list and as well as explain the things that I was talking about before. So one of the first new cards is what people are calling the bootleg, or the replacement for Fighting Against Fate, which I can kind of see, and not really. It's really maximized in this deck because it has the auto effect of where if your leader is the Kai of Time, when it attacks, you get to use 1 card in your warp that has a 5k combo power, and as well as negate the skills for the turn. So you don't really get the skills from the combo card, obviously, but you get to do it twice since it has dual attack. So it's a dual attack, 24k in this deck and 19k in other decks. This is really good because the sweet spot for this deck, as long as you sequence correctly, is 6. So you're pretty much able to use 6 cost overwhelms, or at least like the overwhelm of 6, not so much their cost, pretty much every single time that you do play a card every single turn. And this is really good because it enables you to use one of the other new cards, which is going to be this new Pan, Search for Another World. And what she says is that the Kai of Time, when you play something from your life into your drop, as far as a card, you add the top card of your deck to your life, which basically you rejuvenate. You replace the card that was previously a critical, and now you just get it back for free. And the other activate main, it has been super useful, as long as they don't answer it, of course. You have Bond 3 with Zeno in its name. So at the bottom right, you have Zeno at the bottom right, where you have basically the Trunks Zeno, you have Gogeta Zeno, you have Son Goku Zeno, etc., right? As long as you have 3 of them, including herself, you get to warp one of their cards, which has been super useful against blockers, against just spot removal, basically. It just kind of calls for that almost all the time. Which, not really lastly, there's other support, but whatever. Son Goten challenging the Dark Empire, which is pretty much the best card next to Pan that has come out in the dash packs for Supreme Kai, in my opinion. It is an overwhelm 6. Your leader card is a Black Kai of Time. It has double strike 25k, which is just nuts. They really didn't learn their lesson with thwarting, I guess, huh? And when it's removed from the battle area, it gets removed from the game, which is a pretty good, like, caveat. I think it has come up where I'm like, wow, I could loop this, but I can't because of this permanent. The auto is that when you play from your hand, you get to draw 1, and then the activate main, as long as your leader card is a Kai of Time, and you have 2 or more energy, and you have a Trunks Zeno in play, you play this card from your hand from your warp. So the idea behind this card is, well, it is just a 25k beat stick, but it also is because although the activate main has a limit 1, it also has the overwhelm 6. So what happens is that if you can have 2 of these in your hand, you overwhelm for free, or you can overwhelm beyond all limits, get another one if you don't, if you only have 1. And then as long as you have a Trunk Zeno, which we do play the 1-drop. We do also play the Time Regulator, and with the Demigra Unison, you gain Wormhole for the turn, which means you can overwhelm twice, right? So what happens is that you can play 2 of these guys in a row as long as you know how to sequence it correctly. And it is stupid because you get to draw 2 and then have 2 6-cost 25k double strikers that are swinging to their face that don't go away at the end of the turn because of Kai, which is just so cool. I really love this leader, but I think it's become lackluster because of the weird support that it had. It got better with this card, which is another part of the support, whereas the Overwhelm 3, it's a counter, which basically is a cooler. We already know how effective that is in yellow. And the activate main is that you look at the top 5 when you discard this, as long as your leader is a Kai, and you get a Goku, same thing, or a Vegeta, which is your super combo over here, or other things like Regulator, which is not in this deck. I have to update this. Revive Ravager is what I meant, and this is totally the list, not one that I just now updated and put in the description below. That I had an old one, and this is the new one after testing. So yeah, anyway, you can also get this. So that is pretty much all the support that came out for Kai in the recent, I don't know, last 6 months, and as well as this month. And it has been pretty good. Now, the second thing is Awakening, right? What you need to know for this deck is to awaken efficiently and as well as consistently, and pretty much every first or second turn. And what happens is that the backside or the front side has burst, right? So you have burst 3, you draw 1, and then you awaken either 4 or less, which is possible, or if you have 8 or more cards in Warp, which is pretty much the key factor here. It is pretty easy to get to that too. So what you really want is to open the Demigra, so that way you have Wormhole when you overwhelm, and basically you swing with the leader. You have 3 into the drop, you play the Demigra, and then you overwhelm either the Time Regulator or the Goku, which I didn't talk about this for a reason. The activate main is that if you send this card on the field to the Warp and draw 2 cards, you get to summon 1 card to your hand to your Warp, which helps for the Awakening, and as well as get rid of stuff that's in your hand that you don't need, basically. And the other effect, to look at the top 5, also helps with Awakening, because what happens is that you burst, and then you can use this to pitch it to top 5, to look at the top 5, and then you can use Time Regulator to overwhelm 4, get rid of 1 additional card after that to make it 5 into your Warp, and then burst for the Wormhole for 1, and then you can either you can Wormhole. This is why it's always difficult. You can then overwhelm for the activate main, or with the activate main, putting 2 cards into your from your Warp into your drop area that are battle cards. So, or black battle cards. So you have 3 into your drop. So then you can use the Reflexive Strike or the Revive Ravager. I like Revive Ravager against like a lot of different matchups. Trunks Time Regulator is just, you know, if you don't see maybe one of these, or maybe one of the Beyond All Limits, or even if you want to see Gogeta, or if you want to see this doesn't matter, and I'll talk about that in a second, or if you want to see one of the 6-drop Gotens, any of those things, Time Regulator basically is going to be the better choice for that. But I've done 2 Revive Ravagers plus the Demigra Unison and Awaken the same turn, and swung 2 15Ks with critical. And then what's cool is that because you're awakening turn 1, you're effectively either drawing, what is this, 2, 4, 6, 8 cards in 1 turn, plus the additional overwhelm here, if you get to that point, which you technically can on turn 2. You won't be able to do it turn 1 because you're going to be using the Wormhole for the first overwhelm, and then you have to do it again in order to get the 8. So if you feel like you're going to be wanting to basically maximize your turn, or at least the draws, then just do it turn 2. And at that point, they're going to be swinging at you anyway, so it's not that big of a deal to just take 1 from life. Anyway, so that is super important. I will probably have an additional video or like a short or something like that to get back into that, because I want to make sure that is a little bit more concise as far as explaining. But it's really important to have your 3s in hand, and as well as the Demigra, so that way you can awaken early, and as well as to have Wormhole pretty much every single turn. Because by the time you have Demigra, it kind of goes into the auto sequencing and as well as just remembering your triggers, where you're awakened, and what happens here is that you have 2 different things, right? So you have basically the pool of cards in your warp in order to keep using those in order to overwhelm every single turn and use overwhelm or wormhole. And what's cool about the Demigra Unison is that it doesn't die. So if you didn't know, the activate main, you pitch 1 card, you pay 1, and if you don't have a Unison play, you play 1 black Unison with the 9 power, which is, this is what it is with the marker on it. So basically every single time it dies, it can come right back either from your drop or warp, and then you get to do it right all over again. That's really cool thing about that, and as well as about this deck. One thing I will point out right now, since we're kind of talking about sequencing and triggers, don't worry about warping or getting rid of your Evil Saiyan. You kind of want to do that anyway. Like even Timing Regulator, if you don't want a 10k in your hand, you might as well just warp this, because this can be played if your opponent has 3 or more energy, and you can play this from your hand, or warp. You choose one of your opponent's battle cards in your barrier and send it to your warp, which is just insane. This card is just dumb, because what happens is that if they're at 2 life, you get to take 1 after looking through it. If it's a battle card, or not even a battle card, but energy cost is 7 from it, and send it to your warp, and then you have the choice to play a battle card from their field area and 7 or from their warp into your field area, 7 or less with the skills negated for the turn. And then when they play a battle card, energy cost is 7 or less, you may send 1 of your battle cards to its warp, and you do gain control of the card, which you can just swing with their card, and if they play a card, you can just take it and then give that card back to them, which is just dumb. One other cool interaction is that this is one of my favorite cards, and if Eric is watching this, Eric, you're dumb for not thinking this is a broken card. This has deflect. It costs 1 if you warp something, and basically it says you warp 2 of their cards and it comes back at the end of their turn, which on your turn is basically 2 turns, and it's the same kind of effect with Kai, just on theirs. And it gains critical, and basically it is a 20k critical along with your 15k criticals, and Cumber or Evil Saiyan is dumb because you get to play the cards that you just warped, and there's no downside of that. Like for 3 energy, you get to play 3-4 different cards that have 7 or 8 costs and are just big boys to end the turn, or just to sit there and for them to deal with it. But anyway, the other parts of the autos and triggers really come from the leader, the Unison, and as well as just your overwhelms. So what you want to do is, if you have a number of cards in your overwhelm or your drop, let's say 6, right, you can Beyond All Limits, and then you can get a 6 cost Goten, which is both for free, which is dumb. If you have 1 cost, you can pay it for 1, you can do whatever you want. We already talked about that. And basically what happens is that you get a 3 or 7, which basically is your entire deck, really much like anything useful is your entire deck. You then use the auto effect, the first auto effect of your leader, to draw 1 and then place 3 from your drop into from your warp into your drop, and then you use the burst effect in order to gain wormhole afterwards, and you just use those triggers every so often, or every whatever way you want to do, since you're turn player. And from there, you basically have 4 cards in your drop, and then you can use the activate main to place 2 more from your warping to your drop, which none of that really came from, except for the burst 1 from your deck. So you don't really have any qualms or any concerns about milling out, which is just fantastic. And you get to either overwhelm 6 for this guy to draw 1 and swing for a double strike critical, or double strike 25k with a 30k swing, or you can go 6 here, swing twice, play the pan, and then use your broken ability to place 1 card from your life into your drop, and then place 2 cards from your drop into your warp to set up for next turn, and then all your overwhelm cards aren't sent to warp at the end of the turn. Which also, by the way, if anybody ever argues about it, if you overwhelm and then use the effect, it still stays. Don't fall into the trap that it doesn't. So Yeah, and that's pretty much the way that you want to play the deck pretty much every single turn. Like, it has defense in the way of support the Dark Empire, of 3-drop Kai, and some Gohan, which is just a dumb card because although you can't use it with this guy because the skills are negated, you still are able to have it at 4, or if you have life at 4 or less, which, by the way, what happens is that you go to 6 from your awakening. It can swing to take you to 5, or you can use your activate main to keep the 3 drops that you overwhelmed on the field, and then have stuff into your drop, like 3 if you're critical and you don't have the pan out. And then you can have support of the Empire, defend against 2 different attacks, go to 4, and then you have this online in order to play it when they attack with a battle card. Specifically, just make sure don't forget that you can play this from your warp or drop in rest mode, and then negate the attack, which is just silly. It's just dumb. And then the other effect is that when it's added to your Z energy, you get to warp a 4 or less for 1 energy, which is great. And then one other thing I didn't talk about before we end this video is the Black Smoke Dragon. He has been pretty clutch because you just mill out certain cards, and you can use this turn 2 to awaken as well, and you just draw 2 afterwards. While it does tap you out turn 2, it does have a Effect, and it can get rid of a unison at the worst, or something with barrier. So those things that black was really suffering from, like non-easy barrier removal, we have 2 forms of that, right? We have the Cumber, and as well as the Black Smoke, and as well as an option to awaken and mill very easily. One thing I didn't talk about milling is Brainwash for no more. You already know about the activate battle effect is really good, but the auto effect to place 3 from your warp into your drop area is really, really good. I probably want to play more of these because it just fuels your next overrun play, and it, you already know the triggers that I talked about before. So very excited about this deck. A couple other things. This is just it's an option. I probably would take this out and just put 2 boos in here. The Vegeta is just there to get you to 4. The boo is great because you get to warp something. Basically, that's basically what it's used for. And then we also have the old support between the Trunks, the Goten. Both of them are effectively helping you to awaken. I don't think they're really needed with this card, the Goku, and as well as the other 2 3-drops. And then you don't play Demigra because Dark Overwhelm is basically the leader effect. You have better ways to remove stuff and keep stuff off their field. Demigra is like all right now. It's just kind of weird to say that. Power Burst, you don't really you don't really need that because these are better in my opinion. You don't really play too many 1-drops, so who cares about that? Cumber is great. Don't really know where to fit it. I think it's probably broken, and I just haven't tested it. So someone correct me in the comments below. This guy is probably broken too, but I don't really like the auto effect, so I just didn't want to play that. Human Extinction Attack is not needed because your leader does everything for you. And then Tree Fight Experience, it was in the original build. I might put him back because it's funny, even though it has unique now. The auto leader effect, people forget it's only a Black Saiyan, and they always try to play around it, even in Kai. So I think that's funny, and is also a target for the Thwarting Dark Empire. But the Goku, and as well as the super combo, gets you there. I don't really think you need anything else. You can also add the other 30k Vegeta if you're really concerned about thwarting targets, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I hope you enjoyed. I'm very excited about this deck. Hopefully I can get my hands on all the cards that I need. I've been testing online, and as well as some proxies. So if anything, like, dislike, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.